Alright, so welcome back. If you didn't notice, I did some tweaking when it comes down to camera setting. I'm not sure if it looks better or it looks worse. To me, it seems like it looks slightly better. So, well, hopefully that's the case, right? People are gonna see objectively. They're gonna be the perception of that. But in any case, today what I'll be sharing about is on personalities. More specifically, I'm going to be sharing personalities through the lens of MBTI because, well, that's how I understand theories of personality, right? Because my understanding of the personality is based on the theory of Carl Jung. And you can say that for MBTI itself, the foundation that the personality model is built upon is actually the theory of Carl Jung. So it's, in some sense, you can say that, like, well, reason being that I see the lens world through MBTI is because the theory is fundamentally the same. The foundation of the theory that I use is more fundamentally the same. However, the thing that I have to stress when it comes down to MBTI is that it's going to be a very, very broad topic. There's going to be a lot of things to share and things that I do not intend to share in one video. So this is not like, okay, I watched this video, then I understand MBTI in totality. No, that's not going to be the case, right? That's going to be step 1, basic of MBTI, step 2, the different functions, step 3, going more into details of, okay, like this, if let's say this is your first two primary functions, then how does it actually affect you, and then the stereotypes, and then the patterns of all the things. There's so many things of MBTI, so this is probably going to be quite a long series because I do not intend to share everything in one video. And there's also some caveats that you probably want to understand when it comes down to MBTI, right? By the way, if you right now you do not know what MBTI is, MBTI, which is also known as 16 personalities, is a personality test that you can say that is quite popular. If you ever saw somebody refer to themselves as something like INFJ or ESTP or ENFP or even things like ISFJ, right? So when you hear these 4 letters, basically what they're referring to is MBTI. And if I were to go more into detail right now, so let me just move to the canvas. Again, when it comes down to MBTI, it's the idea of MBTI is that it's based on the dichotomy of 4 different aspects, right? And the aspect is extroversion and introversion, sensory, intuition, thinking, feeling, judging, and perceiving. Again, this is based on the combinations of these 4 dichotomies that you basically get your type. The important thing to note when it comes down to personality tests is that there are limitations when it comes down to personality tests. I'll just go straight to the point of tackling the elephant in the room, which is, are personality tests accurate in general, right? I would say that if you want to utilize personality tests and your goal is accuracy, there are actually a lot of personality tests out there in the market, right? And you can even say that the most scientific one, the most that people have put most recent research into, is a personality model called Ocean, right? Which is openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, if I'm not wrong. Then A is I forgot. A is agreeableness, and then N is neuroticism, right? So you can say that there's a lot of different models, and DISC as well. For those people who don't know about DISC, is also another behavioral type. Then you can also say that there's also Enneagram. So there's so many different types of personality tests out there. And the important thing to note when it comes down to personality tests is that for the most part, all, right, most if not all of them are actually based on pseudoscience. So this is me myself who enjoy learning about all these things and actually utilizing all these things when it comes down to profiling people. I also have to stress that these theories are pseudoscience, which means to say that there is no empirical data to actually prove that they are accurate. But they work on the idea of it's objective if they achieve the results. So the same thing, you can say that you can view personality tests from the lens of something like subconscious, right? How do we prove that a subconscious exists? We can't, but we understand the concept and we utilize subconscious to understand so much thing in psychology. even though you can say that the concept of subconscious is pseudoscience. Is the theories of the personality test, be it Enneagram, MBTI, going to be as accurate as something such as the subconscious? I don't think so, right? Because right now I would just say that the basic limitations of MBTI is that there is a bias when it comes down to how they actually get your personality, right? So if let's say you see in terms of a dartboard, for example, for anybody who have played dart, imagine you have a dartboard and you actually separate this out to 16. This is actually 8, right? So I'm not sure if I cut this, it's gonna be, this probably is gonna be cutting this into half. Is this 16? I don't know. Probably not. Okay, but the whole idea is that, okay, imagine that I cut this into 16 slices. You can say that if you were to throw a dart, if your dart hit here, then like, oh, you could be INTJ. But if your dart were to hit here, because you're still in the quadrant of INTJ, then you'll be like, oh, I'm INTJ. So what does it actually mean? It means that fundamentally, if you got two INTJs could be somewhat different. They might not be super diverse, right? It's not going to be one INTJ is a party person and another INTJ is a quiet person. You can say that it's still possible because MBTI, if you actually utilize MBTI from understanding the function itself, you can say that it shows insight into how this person actually think. And the action of going to party and being a party person could be an ends to a means. So you can say that, yeah, one INTJ could potentially be a party person and another couldn't. Could be somewhat of a homebody, right? Which is typical of what you expect of an INTJ. This again comes down to sampling bias, and my critique when it comes down to MBTI, right? As much as I utilize MBTI to understand people, is MBTI have the idea of your type is predetermined, right? So if you're younger, you are one type. When you're growing up, you're one type. Yeah, although you behave differently when you're younger versus when you're older, they explain it in the way of like, you're still developing the functions. And if you were to get a type, so let's say if I take the test today and I happen to be a ISFJ, and then somewhere down the line I take the test and I am a ENTP, then you can say that based on the theory of MBTI, they chalk it up as if that the fault of it lies upon you, basically, right? Is that, well, it's because you are mistyped, right? You took the test wrongly, and even if you're ISFJ or if you're ENTP, or who's to say that you're not even both, right? Somebody who understands MBTI in more details have profiled you and think that you are more or less going to be something different, such as like a ESFJ, for example. Then you can say that which of this is accurate, right? The whole idea is that based on the theory of MBTI is that, well, you have one accurate one, right? You are not three. You are not developing your personalities. Your personalities can't really change. You have one, and that's all you get. And my personal belief when it comes down to this is I don't really buy it, because you can say that the whole idea of you having only one personality type basically makes the personality test fundamentally flawless. Because you can say that any inaccuracy can be chalked up to the person not taking the test accurately. So again, why am I sharing all these things is to give a healthy dose of skepticism when it comes down to utilizing personality tests, right? Personality tests are going to be more accurate than horoscope. Because I'm going to throw it out there, horoscope is bullshit. You believe in horoscope, good for you, right? But generally from what I see is that there is nothing on the basis of horoscope that can allow me to actually think that, like, okay, this has some basis of it. The only thing that I would say that is accurate about horoscope is the bias of believing it. So you can say that, like, well, if I read about Cancer and I acknowledge that I'm Cancerian because of my birthday, and I acknowledge that I am going to act in this way, I basically give you a verbal contract that I'm going to act like a Cancer. And you can say that this goes along with the human principle of human beings do not like to be inconsistent. If we tell somebody that we're going to act in a certain way, we're going to act in a certain way. So that to me is the extent of accuracy when it comes to horoscope, right? But that is the extreme end. I do not want to put it in a way of like, well, because MBTI is based on the theory of a psychologist, then MBTI is accurate. Because also keep in mind that as much as I respect the work of Carl Jung and as much as I use his work to actually understand about human being, I also face the fact that just like anybody else in the world, he could potentially make errors. And his conclusion could be based on his own subjective life, so to speak. As much as I don't think that's the case, right? I think his theory is actually pretty spot on. But in any case, the whole idea is that that is the thing that I have to share before personality test, right? Because I do not want to share something and give people the wrong perception that personality test is objectively accurate and you can use this effectively, right? Always when it comes down to anything that I share, take what is useful, discard what is not, right? If at any point you see that like, well, Elon, I think that what you're sharing is bullshit, then I will say that like, well, then probably cut the bullshit out and use the thing that is actually useful. What if the entire thing is not useful? Then, well, disregard all these things, move on, look at something that is potentially more useful, right? Go look at mirroring sense of importance, for example. In any case, let me just go down to the basic, right? So for today's lessons, I do not want to go too in depth because otherwise this video is definitely going to overshot, and that's the last thing that I want, right? Because moving forward from this month onwards, I want to actually get some form of time control, so to speak. So the first dichotomy is I versus E. I versus E is your introversion versus your extroversion. So introversion and extroversion, you can say that there is layman's understanding of introversion and extroversion, right? The layman understanding of introversion is that I get energy by being by myself. And extrovert gets energy by being around people. That is the layman's understanding of introversion and extroversion. Can you use that as a basis of understanding I versus E? Yes, to a certain extent, right? But if I were to give a little bit more accuracy of the foundation of introversion and extroversion by Carl Jung, is that the difference between introvert and extrovert is how they value the objective and subjective. So based on the theory of Carl Jung, you can say that, well, the layman, let me just go into the layman, right? The layman says that the get energy by myself, and then this is get energy by being with others. So this is the layman's understanding of the E versus I, which you can utilize it. But generally, when it comes down to Carl Jung's original theory of this, introversion is looking more towards subjective, and extroversion is looking more towards objective. So one example that I can give when it comes down to the difference between introverts and extroverts, you can say that when making decisions, introverts will much more likely consult their own opinion, right? And this goes in line with even introverted thinking and introverted thinking and introverted feeling, right? You do not need to know all these things. This is going to be next lesson. But the whole idea is that what I'm utilizing is that I'm using thinking and feeling, but the introverted version to actually make decision. So one example of, okay, what should I eat? Let's say, for example, today I am going out to eat with my friends, right? Somebody who is an introvert will much more likely to have an opinion of like, I want to eat pizza. Then when it comes down to an extrovert, you can say that the extrovert is much less likely to value his own particular feelings, thoughts, etc. And it's much more likely to garner information from looking at the environment as a whole. So you can say that the extrovert is much more likely to actually want to consult people. They're like, okay, what do you want to eat? 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 To make a final decision when it comes down to where they should eat, right? Of course, this is a mass generalization, because you can say that like, well, I'm an extrovert, but there's some situations that I might use subjective thought, right? So for example, if let's say for that particular day I wanted to go eat McDonald's, for example, then I just tell my friends, guys, we're gonna go eat McDonald's today because I lay the rules because I'm a leader, etc. Then you can say that like, yeah, you are using that, but by and large, when it comes down to introverts and extroverts, these are the two main differences, right, that you just need to take note of. where they get their energy, the layman understanding of it, and the introverts by nature is just going to look more towards subjective, and extroverts are going to look more towards objective, right? So you can also think of it this way, that introverts, the reason why they are always by themselves is because, well, I do not want the external environment to affect my subjective judgment. So that's the ultimate fear based on Carl Jung's theory, is that that's the fear of an introvert, right? Where your environment actually overtakes your subjectivity. And the extroverts is more or less different in that sense. It's the opposite, right? Where the extrovert wants to be around other people, they want to be around the objective, because you can say that they value objective so much more than their subjectivity. Again, this is by and large, right? Because once you add all the different functions in, you can say that there's a little, based on different functions by nature have objectivity and subjectivity inherent in it. So you can say that maybe perhaps like this is something that I will immediately share upon when I move on to the next one, right? So this is just going to be the first dichotomy, which is E and I, the beginning of the MBTI, right? So for example, hypothetically, if let's say, based on this, you say that, well, it seems to me that I'm more like an introvert. So, well, you already know that, okay, the first letter is I. The next letter is going to be S versus N. So what is S versus N? S versus N is basically intuition versus sensory. Wait, what? Intuition start with an I. Yeah, I know, but they can't possibly put two I's, right? It's going to be confusing. So therefore, intuition is actually characterized as N, right? And S is sensory. Now, if you are trying to learn MBTI, the sensory versus intuition is probably the things that is going to be the hardest to wrap your brain around, because it's the most abstract. It's more or less how you were to view the world around you, right? And you can say that the classic example when it comes down to intuitives versus sensors, did I say that right? Right? Intuitives versus sensors is from the idea of looking at the image. So if let's say right now I were to draw this image, right? And then maybe some mountains in the background, and then maybe some grass. You can say that the sensors, what sensors would focus on when it comes down to an image is the objective pieces of the image. So what they'll do is that they'll see, okay, there's a tree. Okay, I observe that there's a tree. I observe that there's a house. I observe that there's grass. I observe that there's mountains. This is how a sensors is going to see the world. Whereas an intuitive is going to see and observe the different things and make inference based on them. So intuitive will probably be looking at a house, then it's going to be like, okay, the house, does it look old or does it look new? If it's old, then maybe you can say that hypothetically this probably is somewhere, this house probably could be few years prior it's been in the picture, right? It could be a picture of a house that have been in the forest for maybe the past 20 years. And then you can say that, like, well, the mountain, what type of mountain is it? Is it a mountain or is it a hill? And you can say that, well, this tree, what type of tree is it? And all these different things, right? So you can say that the differences between a sensor and an intuitive is that a sensor is much more likely to identify their environment for what it is. So if let's say a sensor were to look at my background right now, right, the sensor will be like, okay, there's a door, then there's a light switch over there, and then maybe back then there's like, a ornate stick over there. What is that stick? It's basically like, a decorative katana or something, right? So, and then there's a bed over here, and then the color is this. So this is the thing that sensors will basically take note of, right? Whereas the intuitive is going to be in the case of like, okay, well, there's a door. Is this door, where does this door leads to? Does this door look like a door from this type of particular house? Or you can say that, like, well, this door, what's the utility of this door? Why is it that the person choose this door? Maybe this door have certain designs, or it gives some clue into the personality of the person who chose it, right? So you can say that the intuitive, what matters to an intuitive is to observe something and gather inference about it. you can say that as far as possible, to an intuitive, the tree is not the concern. The concern is what I can infer from the tree. And if I were to put it into image representative, right? An image representation of the difference between intuition and sensory is that sensors, to a certain extent, would observe the world like this: 1 observation, 2 observation, 3 observation, 4 observation, 5 observation. This is what a sensor is going to do. Whereas an intuitive is going to be, okay, 1 observation, okay, make an inference. 2nd observation, make an inference. 3rd observation, make an inference. 4th, make an inference. And 5th, make an inference. So at this junction, people are going to be like, well, doesn't it sound like it's better to be an intuitive? Because it means that I can gather more data from an environment. So why would I want to be a sensor, right? If I take the test, I get a sensor, I'm going to feel bad about it because I want to be an intuitive. I want to be smarter. I want to see more. The answer is, do you actually want to, right? Hypothetically, you can say that yes, an intuitive and a sensor, an intuitive is going to get more details from a particular environment. An intuitive is going to look at this picture and get more details from the picture. However, right, in reality, everything works in real time, right? And because your thought process, in some sense, you can say that it's also determined based on the connections that you have in your brain, and you can say that it's electricity to a certain extent. So you can say that it's still limited by the laws of nature, right? Or laws of physics, which means to say that every sort of process will always have a time associated with it. You can say that I can make inferences really quickly, but the fact that I have to make that inference is going to take me an extra time. And each inferences probably is going to take me extra effort, because you can say that now I have expended extra brain power to actually process all of this. Which means to say that if both a sensor and intuitive have 5 minutes to process a picture, a sensor will most likely be able to process more items than an intuitive, because an intuitive is going to take so long to actually figure this out, right? So much that while intuitive may look at this picture and be at the 3rd inference, right? You'll be inferring, okay, well, what is this tree? Like, why is this tree here? And what does it actually tell me about the environment? Then you can say that, well, the sensor have already finished observing this picture and it's already moving on to the 2nd picture. So you can say that there's also a utility of speed, right? And sensors are much more in tune with their environment because they don't waste so much time of looking into all the minute detail, right? They are much more likely to understand and have a clearer objective view of their environment compared to intuitives, right? So this is one major issue. This is one major differences when it comes down to how people view the world. And the important thing to stress when it comes down to MBTI, right? It's not a case of, well, if I'm a sensor, it means to say that I'll never use intuition. No, that's not the case, right? Even if you're a sensor within your function stack, you would have some form of intuition, right? Even if you're a sensor, you have some intuition in there, vice versa. Which means to say that even a sensor at some point is going to be able to make inference. Right, just like think of a sensor, right? If let's say a sensor have to learn how to draw an image, an artistic sensor, right? It's much more likely to be able to look at how to draw something, how to paint the details, more detail oriented basically. That is the general idea of sensors versus intuitive. Then you can say that the intuitive will probably be thinking too much about the picture to actually draw the picture itself, whereas the sensor will probably be better at drawing the picture, but sensor will also have to imagine how the image will actually look like, right? So this is a case where even if you're a sensor, you're going to use intuition. But generally, I would say that the S and N, if you're trying to learn MBTI or you're trying to type yourself, that's the thing that you're going to waste the longest time to actually figure out, right? Like, am I a ENTP or am I a ESTP? These are the type of question that you're going to ask yourself. How do you know? Learning function could be the case to actually help you, but from my experience, even if you learn functions for the first time, you might not actually get the right idea anyway. So moving on to the 3rd dichotomy is going to be thinking versus feeling. Now, I love thinking versus feeling because thinking versus feeling is the thing that is the most observable from an external party. If I want to read and understand somebody, the first thing that I smell, the first thing that I try to identify, thinking versus feeling. Of course, you can say that sometimes intuition and sensory is very easy to identify if it's too obvious in the other person, especially sensory, which I'm going to go more into details in the next video when it comes down to functions. But by and large, because thinking and feeling is expressed in how we make decision, how we make judgment calls, when somebody tells you what is important to them or they make a decision, they select something, right, they have to more or less basically form a decision statement, right? So for example, do you want to eat this or do you want to eat that? And why do you want to eat this versus why you want to eat that is going to give you clear indication of are they a T or are they a F. Of course, when it comes down to function, there's introverted version of thinking, there's extroverted version of thinking, and introverted version of feeling, extroverted of feelings. Right now, you don't have to learn the differences. This is going to be the next video. But by and large, when it comes down to thinking, which, by the way, I have made a video when it comes down to explaining the difference between thinking and feeling, right? The basic of this thinking and feeling is exactly the same as that video, but that video goes more in depth because that video is about 40 to 50 minutes long. But because I already have the video, I do not want to spend too long to actually go in depth about the differences. But you can say that the basic differences of thinking and feeling is come down to three things, right? How they gather their data, and you can say that the data for thinking tends to be empirical and things that can be proven, right? Empirical. And for feelings, the data that they gather is generally going to be more subjective, right? Such as your beliefs, your feelings, your opinion, your faith, your tradition, and your culture, right? So here's the thing that people might be a little bit confused. What do you mean like tradition and culture? Isn't thinking, tradition, and culture, isn't thinking, tradition and culture still in some sense objective because it's agreed by general population? Well, no, not really, because you can say that the reason why people use tradition and culture is to actually not think. So you can say that in some sense, feelings is all about biases, right? The mental biases that I can use, the shortcut that I can use to actually I do not need to think too much about this because I can just draw a conclusion. And you can say that beliefs work in the way, right? Well, why do I need to actually learn and ponder so much about how the sun works if I can just chalk it up to there's a sun god that lifts the sun in the morning and sets it down in the evening? So that's the difference between how they gather data. The second differences between the thinking and feeling is that how they work. Thinking basically work on the principle of equation, right? It's equational, which means it's cause and effect, right? If I have something, right, this is the original position A, and I add a factor of B, it will logically get me to C. So if I have the ball right now at this position, I throw with this amount of force, physics is going to drive the ball, and I will be able to calculate the force of it, eventually landing to C. So this is how a thinker make decision, right? A thinker is going to make decision based on an equation. If this, and you can say that thinkers also make decision based on true false statement. Is this true? Is this false? If I have this statement, is there any statement that can prove me wrong? So this is something that I actually did not share too much on my video of thinking and feeling, right? So it's actually a good thing that I actually shared it here, is that thinkers also make decision based on true false statement. If something is false, then you can say that well, if I can prove this to be false, then maybe this statement have no purpose to me. A statement that can be proven false, and if I were to still accept that statement will actually have to fall within the realms of feelings. Basically, to a thinker, it's as that, right? If I can't prove it, then it's useless. And if I have to use it temporarily as a crutch, so that I can actually make a certain assumption, then you can say that if anything goes wrong, I blame my assumptions, right? So if let's say I have to believe whether or not somebody did it, if the evidence go against this person, as much as I like the person, I have to go with the evidence. That's basically a thinker, right? It is not cruel, it's logical. That's what I tend to like to think of it this way. And for feelers will see the world and interact with the world. Basically, how feeling actually works and make decision is from the idea of equivalence. And equivalence is working on the equation of A equals to B. So why is A equals to B? A is just equals to B, right? To a feeler, if I think that you're an asshole, there is no explanation of why you're an asshole. Just because you are, right? And you can say that I can even make equations such as if you don't believe in vegetarianism because save the animals, then you are an asshole. So you can say that like eating meat equals to asshole, right? To a thinker is that how can eating meat equals to an asshole? I don't see the relation, I don't see the connection. A feelers will be like, well, you just are. Because that's how feeling actually works. It works on the idea of equivalence. It works on the principle of it is what it is, right? Why is it that's the case? It is what it is, right? That's just how you're going to accept. You're just how you're going to determine and accept statements and decision makes by feelers. Basically, that's the idea, right? And you can say that the beliefs works in that sense, right? Why is it that the sun, how do you explain the sun god exists to lift the sun in the morning and set it down in the evening? It is just what it is, right? Because the book tells me so, right? Therefore, that is the explanation of this. Basically, to feeling, that's the case. Again, the thing that I must stress in the original video of thinking versus feeling is that there is no such thing as pure thinkers and pure feelers. Once I go into my next videos, when it comes down to the functions of MBTI, I'm going to explain that within everybody, every single person, you are all, based on your personality type, you're going to have a thinking function, feeling function, sensory function, and intuitive functions. To deeper theories of MBTI, I'll even go as far to say that in total we have 8 functions. Everybody have all 8 functions within them. So you can say that, well, what determines whether you're a thinker or feeler is just what you use most often and the thing that you trust most, right? But by and large, a thinker is going to utilize feelings. A feeler is going to utilize thinking. So there's no such thing as pure thinker feelers. The last difference between them is that for thinking and feeling, how they derive value, right? Thinking derive value from equation, right? So for example, if let's say I want to calculate the cost, then, well, what is the cost that goes into this? Then what is this second cost? What is the fixed cost? What is the variable cost? Equals to the total cost of this item. And then this is the hypothetically dollars, right? So this keychain is worth $5. But to a feeler is that the keychain is worth however much I want to pay the keychain for. I am going to pay $50 for the keychain because it's Genshin Impact, because it's my favorite waifu, because it's my favorite husbando. Therefore, I'm going to pay $50. Right? Why did you pay $50? Because of my feelings, because I like it, because I love it. That's the whole idea of how feelers make decision, right? Is it wrong to make decision that way? No. Right? There's nothing wrong with making decision that way. The way that I see it is that do whatever you want, right? I would never say a feeling is wrong. I would never say a thinking is wrong. Right? Of course, you can say thinking is wrong if let's say thinking is erroneous, right? So if you make the wrong assumption, you get a wrong answer, then you can say that thinking is wrong. And I would say that feeling is wrong if you were to inconvenience other. So if you're, by exercising your own feelings and your own happiness, inconvenient everybody else, then I will say that your feeling is objectively wrong. So these only the 2 cases where I'll say that it's wrong to have a feeling or thinking, right? But again, this is my own personal views. You don't have to take my words for law or anything like this, right? This is just the opinion of a guy that on the internet that technically doesn't matter. So the last dichotomy, because actually I'm making good time. Luckily, hopefully I end off fast. But the last dichotomy is J versus P, right? Which is your judging versus your perceiving. So P versus J is actually quite straightforward to understand. You can just see it as from the illustration of J tends to be more organized and P tends to be more messy. So the way that J will process information is that from a sequential point of view. So okay, this is step 1. This is step 2, this is step 3, this is step 4, this is step 5. This is how a judger is going to, how their brain is going to work and organize information, right? So J and P is actually how internally your brain is organized, so to speak. And a perceiver is going to do it as like this information links to this, and this information links to this, this information links to this, then it 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 links to this. So you can say that a judger is going to be a lot more organized. The way they think about things is more organized. The way that they organize their life is more organized. One of the trait of judges is that they tend to be neater, whereas conversely, perceivers tend to be a little bit more messy. Is it going to be all perceivers are going to be messy? No, that's not going to be the case, because as I said, based on previous functions, right? So even with the idea of N and S, you can say that S tends to be more objective and N tend to be more subjective. So you can say that if you are introverted sensors, there is a higher chance that you tend to be neater. Are you going to be objectively neat? Probably not. Again, will all judging type, all J types be clean and neat? No, that's not going to be the case. But by and large, the pattern is going to be, if let's say we have a distribution, right? A normal distribution, you can say that the basic expectation, right? The basic expectation is that most of the J's are going to be neat, most of the P are going to be messy. And you can also say that one differences that I figured for J and P is that when left to their own devices, P would prefer to relax. J by nature would prefer to work. So if a J were to be on vacation, they are going to be scratching their head and like, I should be doing something right now. I can't relax because I need to do this, because I have these goals in mind. I need to achieve this by this. I need to do this, right? That's judges by nature. Judges, they are always wanting to work, right? What gives them value to a certain extent is the things that they can churn out. Again, going back to their process, because they have this checklist of what they need to do. And judges to a certain extent is also leads to planning, right? They tend to be good planners, and you can say that planning is always, I have so many steps ahead, and the only way that I'm going to get through all of this is that I do them sequentially, right? Whereas you can say a perceiver is not so concerned of planning, it's more towards connections, and you can say that by default, by and large, a perceiver is much more likely to want to relax when they can. So if let's say it's work time, then a perceiver will be like, I can't wait for my vacation. I want to go on vacation. Would judges want to go on vacation as well? Yes, especially if what is your interest basically is traveling, right? Then you can say that, obviously a judge will also want to go on vacation. So, but this again, it's all going to be by and large, right? Because the last point that I'm going to make before I actually end the video, right, which I'm going to try to wrap this up first. But the whole idea when it comes down to perceiving is that perceivers have the strength in brainstorming. And you can say that perceiver also have the strength when it comes down to analysis. Because the whole idea of linking things together is that I don't make any judgment call. Where this leads, I'm just going to go with it, right? Whereas judges tend to be good planners because they are very sequential. But then again, when it comes down to brainstorming, then you can say that the issues when it comes down to using judging is that I already have a thought process in mind, right? I think this is what's going to happen. Is that going to be the case? I don't know yet, right? But that is probably one of the limitations when it comes down to judging. Again, there's no such thing as perceiving and judging. Which one is good, which one is bad? By and large, I would say that most people tend to value judging, right? Because again, this is the thing that's drilled into us when we're younger. You got to study, you got to work hard, you're going to work, read, do your homework, do this, do that, pay attention. These are all aspects of judging, right? And you can say that the aspects of procrastination, which I don't really want to do it because I want to do whatever I want, then that's more towards perceiving. So you can say that there's a natural bias for people by nature to actually value J. As far as I'm concerned, I'll even say that by nature, the things that is valued for people in general is going to be introversion, because you don't want to bother people by nature. Sensory, right? You want to be more objective because you don't want to be in la la land dreaming about the things that could never be. And you can say that by nature people want to be thinking because I'm logical. And then you can say that people want to be organized, right? So you can say that in some sense people's perception of the ideal type of person in society should be ISTJ. Which, by the way, based on statistics, ISTJ is actually the most common type for males in general, right? What does ISTJ mean? What function do they use? This is going to be a video down. There's going to be a video down the line, right? This is not going to be this video. But again, you are going to see a lot of biases when it comes down to MBTI. If you want to know your personality type, you can go Google 16 personalities. And this is going to be the first link, right? Where you're going to go into it and they're going to just do the test, then you're going to get a personality type. Is it going to be accurate? Again, the limitation is that what is your true personality, right? Is it who you think you are or who you actually are right now? So you can say that these are the two ways that we answer questions, right? If it's a question that we don't know how to answer, then we will probably think of, okay, something in the past. If you ask me whether or not I like to be leader in a situation, that I'll think back of, was there a situation that I volunteered to be a leader? So is this your personality, or is it like based on your subjective view, right? So again, how to take the test is also another discussion and debate altogether. So in any case, this is where I'm gonna end off 16 personalities. This again is still going to be an intro. This is just an introduction, right? And based on the information you have right now, you can say that, well, I already give you a very rudimentary understanding of I, E, N, S, F, T, J, P, right? And one of the things that you can start utilizing right now is that you can try to, in some sense, profile people based on your rudimentary understanding of the different type of I, E, N, S, F, T. So such as like, okay, this person seems more like a E to me. Then this person seems to like think a little bit more towards like, you know, the theories and everything. So maybe it's more towards the N. Then this person tends to be more feeling oriented, less objective. Then maybe it's a F. Then you can say that, well, this person feels to me a little bit more perceiving. They don't really have they're not very organized. They don't really have like a plan in mind. So maybe this person is a ENFP. Is this the accurate way to type people? No. Right? The most accurate way to type people is to understand the function, to understand the patterns, and from there to actually break down from an elimination basis to actually figure out the personality type, right? At least that's how I profile people. But I would say that everybody who's ever interested about MBTI have started profiling people from this basic level. So you can say that this is your basic driving license, right? This is when you are a trainee, you are learning driving for the first time, this is what you're going to be utilizing. And starting to utilize and trying to ponder on profiling other people is actually a step in the right direction when it comes down to actually using profiling. Because the profiling that I'm going to teach you is going to be so much harder for a beginner to use. So you can say that, well, in the interim period while you're still learning that, this is the direction that you can go. Are you going to be accurate? Probably not, but you can say that you are going to be more accurate than if you're just guesstimating out from nowhere, right? So at least this gives you a little bit of structure. So my closing statement is that learn and process this, start to utilize this, play around with it until more information comes down to it, right? And you can even say that through playing from this, you can probably profile somebody to be like, you know, for example, ENFP, right? For example, if you're profiling your crush, right? Because that's what most people are going to use all these things, right? They're going to use and gather information because they find utility in it. So I am going to profile my crush, and I'm going to see if ENFP is going to be compatible with my type, right? Then what you're going to end up doing is that you're going to research on ENFP, you're going to research on your own personality type, and then this is going to grow and grow and grow, right? I think and I believe that's actually what everybody who is interested in MBTI actually got into MBTI in the first place. But in any case, this is my basic sharing, and even my basic sharing is going to take 40 minutes, right? So again, this is just the foundation of MBTI. This is just to prep you on what is to come. The next video, I'm going to go more into functions, right? I'm going to go into, well, if let's say you are ENFP, then in actual fact, what functions are you using? What are the functions? When you say introverted thinking, extroverted thinking, what do you actually mean? When you say introverted feeling, extroverted feeling, what do you actually mean, right? So that's going to be the next video where I'm actually going to break down all 8 functions. How long is that video going to be? I have no idea, right? Because it does, right off the top of my head, it seems like there's a lot of work to do when it comes down to that. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you have any confusion, you want to have clear out any queries, or even such as like you want to say that, hey, my type is this, you know, you can also comment down below. Or even if you want to guesstimate, like, you know, I'm gonna guess what your MBTI type is, by all means go ahead, right? You know, give your best guess down below. Probably at some point in the future, if people actually want to know, then I'll tell people what my MBTI type is. But of course, if people don't really want to know, then why would I want to share the information anyway, right? In any case, I hope you enjoyed this. If there's any question, do let me know. If not, then I'll see you in the next one. See you and take care. Bye-bye.